Subscribe to Infidelity Tales Lab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Architect. Curtis Lamb had built empires for molecules. At 34, he stood in the sterile white corridors of Helix Biosolutions, watching technicians handle his creation with a reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. The bacterial strain, designation HX7, glowed faintly blue under UV light, pulsing with engineered life. It was beautiful. It was revolutionary. It was his. Dr. Lamb, a young researcher, Ton Bird, approached nervously. The cascade sequence is showing those fluctuations again. Curtis nodded, already pulling up the data on his tablet. 7 years ago, he'd isolated an extremophile bacterium from a volcanic vent off the coast of Iceland. 3 years of genetic modification later, HX7 could produce complex pharmaceutical compounds at 1/10 the cost of traditional synthesis. Helix's stock had quadrupled. The company's flagship drug, entering phase 3 trials, would be worth billions. And only Curtis knew how to keep HX7 alive. The strain was temperamental, requiring specific environmental adjustments every 72 hours. A proprietary cascade sequence that Curtis had never fully documented. He meant to, but Gordon Campbell, the CFO and Curtis's father-in-law, had been too eager to rush production. Documentation could wait, Gordon had insisted. They needed to scale up first, satisfy the investors, prepare for the IPO. Curtis had protested. He demanded proper protocols, full documentation, a team trained in HX7 maintenance. Gordon had smiled as politicians smile and said, "You're too valuable to waste time teaching others, son. Just keep doing what you do best." That was 3 years ago. Adjust the pH down 0.03 units, Curtis instructed Ton, and increase the nitrogen feed by 2%. Monitor for 6 hours. Yes, sir. Curtis watched Ton work for a moment, then headed toward his office. The building's executive floor gleamed with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay. Helix occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown skyscraper, a monument to biotech success. Gordon's office dominated the corner, twice the size of anyone else's. Curtis's own office was modest but positioned strategically between the executive suite and the research labs. He designed it that way. Close enough to oversee HX7, far enough from Gordon's suffocating presence. His wife, Christy Campbell, was waiting inside. "We need to talk," she said, closing the door behind her. Christy was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful, polished, maintained, intimidating. They'd met at Stanford, where Curtis had been finishing his PhD and Christy was getting her MBA. She'd been charming then, interested in his research, supportive of his obsessive work hours. The daughter of a successful executive, she understood ambition. The marriage had been strategic on both sides, Curtis realized now. She'd wanted a brilliant husband to display at cocktail parties. Gordon had wanted Curtis's genius locked into the family business. "Your brother screwed up again," Curtis said, not looking up from his computer. Christy's jaw tightened. Dale Campbell, Gordon's son from his first marriage, was Helix's VP of Research Development, a title that meant nothing given his incompetence. Dale was 36, handsome in a soft-jawed way, and utterly convinced of his own brilliance despite evidence to the contrary. Dale said you sabotaged his presentation. Curtis finally looked at her. Dale's presentation was wrong. The efficacy numbers he cited don't exist. I corrected him before he embarrassed himself in front of the FDA. He says you humiliated him. He humiliated himself by not doing basic fact-checking. Christy crossed her arms. "My father wants you to apologize." "For what?" "Preventing Dale from committing fraud." "Don't be dramatic." "Dale made a mistake." "Dale makes a lot of mistakes." Curtis pulled up a folder on his screen. "In the last 6 months, he's misreported data 4 times. Approved contaminated samples twice, and bypassed safety protocols that could have killed someone. I've covered for him every time because Gordon asked me to. Because he's family." "No, Christy. Because your father is terrified that if Dale's incompetence becomes public, it'll affect the IPO." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Curtis, we're 3 months from going public. 3 months from being worth $500 million. Can you please just play nice with Dale until then? Curtis studied his wife's face, searching for any sign of the woman he'd married. He found only calculation. What did Dale tell Gordon? Christy hesitated. That you're trying to undermine him. That you're jealous of his position. Curtis laughed, a short, bitter sound. Dale has a position because Gordon gave it to him. I have a position because I'm the only person on earth who can do what I do. Don't be arrogant. It's not arrogance when it's true. Christy left without another word, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Curtis returned to his work, but his mind churned with unease. The situation with Dale had been escalating for months. Gordon's protection of his incompetent son was becoming dangerous, not just to Curtis but to the entire company. Curtis pulled up a hidden directory on his secure server. 7 years of documentation. Every mistake Dale had made, every protocol Gordon had bypassed, every financial irregularity Curtis had noticed while maintaining the production systems. He'd been collecting it all, initially just as insurance. Now he wondered if insurance would be enough. Chapter 2. The Incident. The crisis came on a Thursday morning, exactly when Curtis had predicted it would. Dale Campbell had overridden the automated safety systems in Bioreactor 7, tried to increase production yields before the quarterly earnings call. Curtis discovered it during his routine morning check, staring at the screen in disbelief as temperature readings spiked into the danger zone. Curtis was already running toward the production floor. Emergency shutdown on BR-7. Authorization LAM Alpha 7. The young researcher's fingers flew across the keyboard. Sir, the override won't take. Someone locked it with executive clearance. Curtis's blood went cold. Executive clearance meant Gordon or Dale. He grabbed his phone, calling Dale directly. What? Dale's voice was irritated. BR-7 is critical. You need to release the executive lock now. I'm running an optimization protocol. The yields were too low. The protocol is killing HX7, the thermal stress alone. I know what I'm doing, Curtis. Maybe if you weren't so conservative with the parameters. Curtis hung up and called Gordon. No answer. He tried Christy. Voicemail. Manual override. Physically cut the power if you have to. But it was too late. Curtis watched the bioreactor's readings cascade into failure. The bacterial colony, stressed beyond tolerance, began producing toxic compounds instead of the intended pharmaceutical. In 12 seconds, $30 million worth of product became hazardous waste. The alarms were still blaring when Dale appeared, face red with fury. What did you do? Dale shouted over the noise. Curtis stared at him, genuinely speechless. What did I? You overrode the safety protocols. I was improving the yield. You shut it down out of spite. I tried to shut it down to save the culture. You locked me out. Other researchers had gathered, watching the confrontation. Tan stood frozen, still holding the emergency shutdown tablet. Dale stepped closer, his voice dropping to a venomous whisper. You've been sabotaging me since day one. You can't stand that I have authority here. Well, guess what? My father owns this company, and you're just an employee. Curtis felt something break inside him. Not anger, but clarity. He'd been protecting these people, shielding them from the consequences of their own incompetence. And this was the gratitude he received. Dale, Curtis said quietly, you just destroyed a $30 million culture because you don't understand basic bioreactor dynamics. That's not sabotage. That's natural selection. Dale's fist came fast, catching Curtis on the cheekbone. Curtis stumbled back, more from surprise than force. The lab went silent. Tan gasped. Someone yelled for security. Curtis touched his face, felt blood. He looked at Dale, who was breathing hard, fists still clenched. Feel better? Curtis asked. You're done, Dale spat. I'm telling my father everything. About your insubordination, your sabotage, your jealousy. You'll be lucky if we don't sue you. Curtis nodded slowly. Okay. The simplicity of the response seemed to confuse Dale. He'd expected anger, defensiveness, fear. Instead, Curtis simply walked to his office, closed the door, and began making copies of 7 years of carefully organized files. By noon, Gordon Campbell had summoned him to the executive floor. Gordon's office was decorated with symbols of success, awards, photos with politicians, a view that cost 6 figures per square foot. The CFO sat behind his mahogany desk like a king granting audience. Curtis. Gordon's tone was disappointed father, not businessman. What happened today is unacceptable. I agree. Dale's override of the safety systems. I'm talking about your attitude. Gordon leaned back in his chair. Dale came to me in tears. Said you've been undermining him for months, and when he tried to innovate, you shut him down and humiliated him. Curtis felt his jaw clench. That's not what happened. No, because there are a dozen witnesses who saw you argue with him, saw you shut down his optimization protocol, saw him defend himself. He punched me, Gordon, after you insulted him publicly. Gordon waved his hand dismissively. Dale's passionate about this company. Maybe he overreacted, but you pushed him to it. Curtis stared at his father-in-law, understanding fully for the first time how this would go. Dale's version was the version that would stand, because Dale was family and Curtis, for all his genius, was not. I want a formal apology, Gordon continued. Tomorrow, at the all-hands meeting, you'll apologize to Dale publicly for your behavior and commit to being a better team player. No. Gordon's eyes narrowed. Excuse me. I won't apologize for preventing disaster. Dale's override destroyed $30 million in product and could have produced toxic compounds that would have contaminated the entire production floor. If you want to punish someone, punish him. You're letting your ego. This isn't ego, Gordon. This is basic safety and competence. Dale is a liability, and you protecting him is going to destroy this company. The room went cold. Gordon stood slowly, his face hardening into something ugly. You forget your place, Curtis. I gave you this opportunity. I welcomed you in my family. And this is how you repay me? By insulting my son? I'm stating facts. You're being insubordinate. Gordon's voice rose. And unless you want to lose everything, your position, your reputation, your marriage, you'll do what I say. Curtis felt strangely calm. He'd known this moment would come eventually. Gordon was a man who saw the world in terms of control and submission. Curtis had been useful, so he'd been tolerated. But the moment he challenged the family hierarchy, he became expendable. I'll think about it, Curtis said finally. You'll do more than think. Tomorrow, all-hands meeting, 9 a.m. Be ready to apologize and grovel if necessary. Or you're off the project until you do. Curtis nodded and left, his mind already working through calculations. Not scientific ones this time. Personal ones. Chapter 3. The Declaration. The all-hands meeting took place in Helix's main conference center, a room designed to hold 300 people comfortably. Today it was packed, standing room only. Word had spread about yesterday's confrontation. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Curtis arrived exactly at 9, wearing his usual lab coat over dark jeans and a button-down shirt. He looked calm, almost serene. Dale sat in the front row, wearing a designer suit and a smug expression. Christie sat beside him, avoiding Curtis's gaze. Gordon stood at the podium, his presence commanding attention. Thank you all for coming, Gordon began. We're here today to address an incident that occurred yesterday. As many of you know, there was a confrontation between Dr. Curtis Lamb and Dale Campbell, our VP of Research Development. The room was silent, electric with anticipation. I want to be clear about our company values, Gordon continued. At Helix, we're family. We support each other, lift each other up, and resolve conflicts professionally. What happened yesterday fell short of that standard. Curtis stood against the back wall, watching Gordon perform. Curtis Lamb has made significant contributions to this company. His work on HX7 has been valuable. However, his behavior toward Dale, his insubordination, his public disrespect, cannot be tolerated. Some people shifted uncomfortably. Others nodded along. Curtis saw Ton Bird in the middle of the room, looking distressed. Therefore, Gordon's voice rose with authority. Until Curtis Lamb offers a sincere public apology to my son, he is removed from the HX7 project and all critical research initiatives. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Removing Curtis from HX7 was like removing a heart surgeon mid-operation. Gordon's eyes found Curtis in the back. "Curtis, would you like to say something?" The room turned as one, 300 pairs of eyes locking onto him. Curtis felt the weight of the moment, the expectation of humiliation. Gordon wanted him broken, apologizing, submitting to the family hierarchy. Curtis pushed off the wall and walked down the center aisle, his footsteps loud in the silence. People parted for him. He reached the front, turned to face the crowd, and smiled. "Okay," he said simply. Gordon blinked. "Okay, what?" "Okay, I accept your decision." The confusion on Gordon's face was almost comical. This wasn't in the script. Curtis was supposed to argue, defend himself, maybe even apologize. Instead, he just agreed. "So, you'll apologize?" Dale called out, unable to hide his excitement. Curtis turned to look at him. "No, I accept being removed from the project." The room erupted in whispers. Gordon held up his hand for silence. "Curtis, think carefully about what you're doing. Without the HX7 project, you have no position here. I understand. This is your career, your reputation. I'm aware." Gordon's jaw clenched. He played his power card, and Curtis had simply folded. It felt wrong, anticlimactic. But what could Gordon do? He'd made his ultimatum public. He had to follow through. "Fine," Gordon said coldly. "Security will escort you to collect your personal items. You're restricted from all labs and production facilities immediately." Curtis nodded and turned to leave. As he passed Tom Bird, he paused. "The cascade sequence needs adjustment in 68 hours, he said quietly. "You have my notes." Tom looked terrified. "Dr. Lamb, I don't know how. You'll figure it out." Curtis kept walking. The crowd parted again, and Curtis returned to the back of the room. 2 security guards were already waiting. He went with them peacefully, leaving 300 people stunned in his wake. The next morning, Curtis arrived at Helix at 7 a.m. The security guards recognized him and waved him through. His badge still worked. He went directly to his office, pulled out 3 cardboard boxes, and began packing. 7 years of his life fit into 3 boxes. Books, a few personal photos, his collection of geological samples from Iceland. He left the diplomas on the wall. Let them remember what they'd lost. Gordon appeared in the doorway at 8:30, earlier than his usual 10 a.m. arrival. He looked smug, satisfied with himself. "Learned your lesson?" Gordon asked, leaning against the doorframe. Curtis carefully placed a framed photo of DNA helixes into the last box. "I learned a lot working here, Gordon. Thank you for that. Ready to apologize now?" "Dale's willing to be gracious if you are." Curtis sealed the box with tape, then pulled out an envelope from his desk drawer. His resignation letter, written last night, formal and final. "I won't be apologizing," Curtis said, handing Gordon the envelope. "I'm resigning, effective immediately." Gordon's smug expression faltered. He opened the envelope, scanned the letter, and his face went pale. "You can't resign. You're under contract. My contract has a termination clause. I'm exercising it. I have to give 30 days notice, but since you removed me from all projects yesterday, I assume I'll be spending those 30 days at home." "Curtis, let's talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. I'm done." Gordon's voice hardened. "You realize you can't work in this field again? I'll make sure of it." And Christy. Christy chose her side yesterday when she sat next to Dale. Gordon stepped into the office, closing the door. His businessman facade cracked, revealing something desperate underneath. "Curtis, be reasonable. The IPO is in 3 months. We need you until then. After that, you can name your price. Triple your salary, equity, whatever you want. I don't want anything from you. HX7 needs maintenance. The cascade sequence is documented in my notes. Train someone else. No one else can." Gordon stopped, realization dawning. "You're the only one who knows how." Curtis picked up his boxes. "That was your decision, not mine. I tried to train a team. You said it was a waste of time. You wanted to keep me essential, keep me trapped. Congratulations. You succeeded until you didn't." He moved toward the door. Gordon didn't move. "Curtis, please, think about what you're doing. You're not just hurting me, you're hurting Christy, everyone who works here." "I am thinking, Gordon. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly." He pushed past his father-in-law and headed toward the elevator. Behind him, he heard Gordon's phone ring, heard the CFO answer it with forced cheerfulness. Curtis was waiting for the elevator when he heard the shout. "Where is he?" Burton Perkins, Helix's chief counsel, came running down the hallway, his face ashen. He was a small man, usually composed, but now he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "Mr. Campbell." "Sir, tell me you didn't let him resign." Gordon emerged from Curtis's office, confused. "What? He just—" Burton grabbed the resignation letter from Gordon's hand, read it, and made a sound like a wounded animal. "Oh God. Oh no. Sir, tell me you didn't. Tell me you didn't. What are you talking about?" Burton looked at Curtis, who was calmly waiting for the elevator, then back at Gordon. "His contract, sir. Did you read his contract?" "Of course I read it. He helped draft it. But it's standard." "It's not standard." Burton's voice cracked. "Dr. Lamb's contract includes exclusive licensing for HX7. If he resigns, the license terminates. The bacterial strain, all the modifications, the production protocols, they're all his intellectual property. We only had rights while he was employed here." The color drained from Gordon's face. "That's not. We own HX7. The company developed it." "He developed it. Here, yes, but the original isolation was his personal research. We licensed it from him, conditional on his employment. I flagged this 7 years ago, but you said he'd never leave, that he was family." Curtis's elevator arrived. He stepped in, turned to face the hallway, and pressed the button for the lobby. Gordon stood frozen, the resignation letter crumpling in his fist. Burton was frantically scrolling through his phone, probably pulling up contract files. Other executives had emerged from their offices, drawn by the commotion. As the elevator doors began to close, Curtis spoke one last time. "You wanted me to learn my lesson, Gordon. Consider it learned." The doors shut on Gordon Campbell's face, a face that had just realized what Curtis had known all along. At Helix Biosolutions, Curtis Lamb wasn't an employee. He was the foundation. And foundations, once removed, bring everything down. Chapter 4. The Unraveling. Curtis spent his first day of freedom reorganizing his home office in his Pacific Heights apartment, the apartment he'd bought before marrying Christy, kept in his name alone. Smart move, in retrospect. His phone rang 47 times. He ignored all of them. Christy came home at 9 p.m., slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Curtis was at his computer, reviewing job offers from 3 competitors who'd somehow already heard about his resignation. "What have you done?" Christy's voice was ice and fury. Curtis swiveled his chair to face her. "I resigned. You were there. You destroyed everything. The IPO, my father's reputation, our future." "Your future," Curtis corrected. "This was never our future, Christy. This was your father's future, and you were happy to sacrifice me to protect it." She grabbed her phone, thrust it in his face. The screen showed a Bloomberg headline. Helix Biosolutions in crisis as lead scientist resigns weeks before major clinical trial. The stock dropped 18% today, Christy hissed. 18%. Investors are panicking. My father has been in emergency meetings all day. I'm sure he has. You did this on purpose. You planned this. Curtis stood, moving past her to the kitchen. I plan to do good work and be treated with respect. Your family had other plans. Christy followed him, her heels clicking on the hardwood. You're being petty. Dale made a mistake, and you're punishing everyone for it. Dale's mistake cost the company $30 million. I prevented it from being worse. And your father backed Dale, threatened me, and publicly humiliated me. So yes, I left. You could have stayed. You could have apologized, played along for 3 more months. And then what? Your father keeps Dale in power, I keep cleaning up his messes, and we all pretend everything's fine. Curtis pulled a beer from the fridge. No thanks. Christy's mask slipped, revealing desperation. Curtis, please. Come back. Name your terms. My father will agree to anything. Anything except hold Dale accountable. Dale's his son, and I'm your husband. But that didn't stop you from sitting next to him at the meeting. Christy's face hardened. This marriage is over. I know, Curtis said quietly. I'll have my lawyer send the papers. She stared at him, seeming to realize he meant it. You'll get nothing in the divorce. My father will make sure of that. I don't want anything from you or your father. Keep it all. Curtis took a drink. I just want to be free of the Campbell family. Christy left without another word. Curtis finished his beer alone, then returned to his computer and accepted the job offer from Meridian Biotech, Helix's biggest competitor. They'd offered him double his previous salary, full research autonomy, and a percentage of any patents he developed. The contract was signed by midnight. At Helix Biosolutions, the crisis was escalating faster than anyone had predicted. Ton Bird stood in the production facility at 3 a.m., staring at bioreactor readings that made no sense. The HX7 culture was degrading. Slowly, but measurably. The cascade sequence was due in 18 hours, and Curtis's notes, extensive as they were, read like instructions written in a foreign language. Try increasing the nitrogen feed, Dale Campbell suggested, standing behind him with his arms crossed. Dr. Lamb's notes say that destabilizes the culture during the preliminary phase, Ton replied nervously. Dr. Lamb isn't here anymore, and my way makes more sense. Tom wanted to scream. Dale's way had destroyed BR7, but Dale was VP of Research Development, and Tom was a junior researcher who wanted to keep his job. Yes, sir, Ton said, making the adjustment. 30 minutes later, the degradation accelerated. Gordon Campbell convened an emergency board meeting at 6 a.m. Friday morning. The board members arrived grim-faced, having seen the stock price and the media coverage. Gentlemen, ladies, Gordon began, his politician's smile firmly in place. We're facing a temporary setback, but temporary? Lawrence Rosario, the board chairman and a ruthless venture capitalist, cut him off. Gordon, your lead scientist just quit. The scientist who created your only viable product. That's not temporary. That's catastrophic. We have his notes. We have a team. His team doesn't know what they're doing. This from Marlon Peters, the board's technical advisor and a biotech veteran. I've been reviewing the situation. Curtis Lamb didn't just create HX7. He is HX7. The strain requires constant adjustment, and he never fully documented his maintenance protocols. He was supposed to document everything. Gordon protested. You never gave him time. Marlon shot back. You pushed for rapid scaling, rush production, prioritize the IPO timeline over proper scientific protocols. And now you're paying the price. Walter Thompson, representing the largest investor group, leaned forward. What's the plan to fix this? Gordon straightened. We're in negotiations to bring Dr. Lamb back. He's upset about the situation with my son, but I'm confident we can reach an arrangement. What situation with your son? Lawrence's eyes narrowed. The room went quiet. Gordon realized his mistake too late. There was a minor disagreement, Gordon hedged. Disagreement about what? Burton Perkins, the lawyer, cleared his throat miserably. Mr. Campbell's son, Dale, who is VP of Research Development, had an altercation with Dr. Lamb that resulted in property damage and assault. The board members exchanged glances. Assault, Lawrence repeated flatly. Dale was provoked. Gordon, Walter interrupted, his voice dangerous. Please tell me you didn't force your lead scientist to apologize to your son after your son assaulted him. Gordon's silence was answer enough. Lawrence stood abruptly. I'm calling for a vote of no confidence. Gordon, you're suspended pending investigation. Burton, you're interim CFO. Your first priority is getting Curtis Lamb back, whatever it takes. Your second priority is firing Dale Campbell. You can't fire my son. Watch me. Lawrence looked around the table. All in favor? Every hand went up. Chapter 5. The Cascade Failure. Curtis received the call from Burton Perkins at noon on Saturday. Dr. Lamb, please. The board is offering you a new contract. Full autonomy. Dale Campbell has been terminated. Gordon is suspended. No, Curtis said, sitting in a coffee shop in North Beach, enjoying his first peaceful weekend in years. Dr. Lamb, please, just listen to the offer. Burton, I signed with Meridian yesterday. I start Monday. Silence on the other end. Then you what? Meridian Biotech. They're letting me build my own research division. Clean slate, full funding, no incompetent executives' kids to babysit. You can't. your non-compete clause. Applies to trade secrets, not general expertise. I'm not taking HX7 with me. That stays with Helix for whatever it's worth. Dr. Lamb, HX7 is dying. The culture is degrading. We're 36 hours from critical failure. Curtis took a sip of his coffee. Have you tried following my notes? Your team doesn't understand them. Then hire someone who does. There is no one who does. You're the only person on Earth. Burton stopped, hearing himself. That was your plan, wasn't it? You made yourself indispensable. No, Burton. Gordon made me indispensable. I tried to train people. He refused. He wanted me trapped, dependent on the company and the family. Now you're all learning what happens when you build your entire business model on one person's expertise and then treat that person like garbage. Curtis could hear Burton's breathing, rapid and panicked. Please, Burton said finally. I'm begging you. Come back for one day. Save the culture, train someone, anything. We'll pay you consulting fees. Name your price. $1 million per hour, minimum 4 hours. Burton choked. That's $4 million to save a billion-dollar company? Sounds like a bargain. Curtis stood, dropping money on the table for his coffee. But let's be honest, Burton. Gordon won't pay it. He's too proud. He'll think he can fix this himself, or blame me, or find some legal way to force me back. And by the time he realizes he can't, it'll be too late. Dr. Lamb. Good luck, Burton. You're going to need it. Curtis hung up and blocked the number. By Sunday evening, HX7 was in free fall. The bacterial culture, stressed beyond recovery, had begun producing toxic compounds. The entire production facility had to be evacuated and sterilized. 7 years of careful cultivation died in 18 hours. Ton Bird sat in the empty lab, staring at dead cells under a microscope, and cried. He'd tried everything in Curtis's notes. He called in experts from Stanford and Berkeley. Nothing worked. The strain was gone. Dale Campbell had also been crying, though for different reasons. His termination had come with a humiliating exit interview where the board's investigators presented evidence of his incompetence. Dozens of incidents, all documented by Curtis over the years. Dale wasn't just fired, he was unhireable in the industry. Christy Campbell filed for divorce Sunday night, citing irreconcilable differences. Her lawyer had advised against it, given Curtis's growing reputation as the biotech genius who'd escaped the toxic Campbell family. Public sentiment was on Curtis's side, but Christy was furious and wanted revenge, even if it cost her. And Gordon Campbell sat in his home office, watching his empire crumble, and finally understood what he'd lost. Monday morning, Curtis walked into Meridian Biotech's headquarters in South San Francisco. The building was smaller than Helix, less ostentatious, but the lab spaces were state-of-the-art. Keenan Hull, Meridian CEO, met him personally. Dr. Lamb, welcome. We're thrilled to have you. Thank you. I'm looking forward to getting started. Keenan handed him a tablet. We've already set up your lab space. Your team is being assembled. I'm giving you full hiring authority. And I wanted you to see this. Curtis looked at the tablet. It showed a news article. Helix Biosolutions faces criminal investigation as HX7 production fails. Criminal? Curtis looked up, surprised. The FDA is investigating. Apparently, Helix rushed several safety approvals and possibly falsified some clinical trial data. Your departure triggered regulatory scrutiny, and what they found. Keenan shook his head. Gordon Campbell is looking at serious prison time. Curtis felt a cold shock. He documented Dale's safety violations, but he hadn't realized how deep the corruption went. Gordon must have been covering for Dale for years, falsifying reports, bribing inspectors. I had no idea, Curtis said honestly. We know. The investigation makes that clear. You were the only one maintaining proper protocols. Once you left, everything fell apart. Keenan clapped him on the shoulder. You're a hero in the industry right now. The scientist who refused to compromise his ethics, even at personal cost. Curtis thought about that. Hero felt wrong. He just wanted to be respected, to do good work. But the Campbell family had made that impossible. Come on, Keenan said. Let me show you your new kingdom. As they walked through Meridian's gleaming corridors, Curtis felt something he hadn't felt in years. hope. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The full scope of the disaster emerged over the next 2 weeks. The FDA's investigation revealed that Gordon Campbell had been systematically covering up Dale's mistakes for years. Contaminated samples marked as clean. Efficacy numbers inflated by 15 to 20%. Safety protocols ignored or falsified, all to maintain the appearance of success and keep the IPO on track. But the real bombshell came from an unexpected source. Marquis Liu, Helix's head of IT security. Marquis had worked at Helix for 5 years, quietly maintaining servers and security systems. He was invisible, exactly as IT people often are, until they're not. On a Wednesday morning, Marquis walked into the FBI's San Francisco field office and handed them a hard drive. "I've been documenting everything," he said simply. The hard drive contained 5 years of emails, financial records, and recorded conversations. Marquis had been suspicious of Gordon's activities for years and had been collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment. That moment was now. The evidence painted a devastating picture. Gordon Campbell had been embezzling company funds, funneling money through fake consulting contracts and inflated supplier invoices. Over $12 million over 6 years. Dale Campbell had sexually harassed 3 female employees. Gordon had paid them off with company money and forced them to sign NDAs. One victim, Adela McKnight, had been a rising star in biochemistry before Dale's behavior drove her from the field entirely. Gordon had been engaging in insider trading, using knowledge of company developments to make strategic stock purchases through offshore accounts. Most damning, Gordon had known HX7 was unstable. Curtis had warned him repeatedly, sent him technical briefings explaining the risks. Gordon had ignored every warning because acknowledging the problem would have delayed the IPO. The FBI arrested Gordon Campbell on Thursday morning. The perp walk was filmed. Gordon in handcuffs, looking decades older, being led into a federal building while reporters shouted questions. Christy Campbell tried to distance herself, claiming ignorance. But emails revealed she'd known about the harassment payments, had helped her father hide assets. She was named as a co-conspirator. Dale Campbell fled to Mexico, was extradited within a week, and immediately tried to cut a deal by blaming everything on his father. Curtis heard about the arrest while working in his new lab at Meridian. Ton Bird, who'd followed Curtis to the new company, brought him the news. "Dr. Lamb, have you seen this?" Ton held up his phone, showing the perp walk video. Curtis watched in silence. He felt no satisfaction, no triumph, just tired sadness. "I knew Gordon was corrupt," Curtis said quietly. "I documented a lot of it, but I didn't realize how deep it went." "You could have exposed him years ago," Ton pointed out. "Maybe, but exposing Gordon would have destroyed Helix, and there were good people working there. People like you." Curtis returned to his microscope. "I hoped he'd retire, or the board would figure it out. I was naive." "You weren't naive. You were optimistic." Ton sat down. "Dr. Lamb, there's something else. Adela McKnight, one of the women Dale harassed, she's been trying to contact you." Curtis looked up. "What?" "She wants to thank you. She says your resignation gave her the courage to come forward. The FBI approached her after you left, and she told them everything." Curtis felt something crack in his chest, not breaking but opening. He'd thought he was just saving himself when he resigned. He hadn't realized he might be saving others too. "Give me your contact information," Curtis said. "I'd like to talk to her." Chapter 7. The Trial. The trial of Gordon Campbell became a media sensation. Federal prosecutors charged him with wire fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, securities fraud, and conspiracy. Christie faced reduced charges in exchange for testimony against her father. Dale, true to form, blamed Gordon for everything and claimed he'd been manipulated. Curtis was subpoenaed as a witness. He testified for 3 days in late January, explaining the science, the protocols, and Gordon's systematic ignoring of safety concerns. On the stand, Curtis was calm and precise. He presented documentation dating back 7 years. Every warning he'd given, every corner Gordon had cut, every time Dale's incompetence had been covered up at Curtis's expense. The defense attorney, a slick corporate lawyer named Todd McMillan, tried to paint Curtis as a disgruntled employee seeking revenge. Isn't it true, Dr. Lamb, that you were jealous of Dale Campbell's position? No. You resented working under someone less qualified? I resented being forced to cover up incompetence that endangered people. Yet you never formally reported these concerns to the board. I reported them to Gordon Campbell, the CFO, and my direct superior. He ordered me to keep quiet. Todd pulled out an email. This email from Gordon states, "Curtis, I value your concerns, but Dale is learning. Please be patient." That hardly sounds like he was ordering you to stay silent. Curtis smiled slightly. That email is from March 2023. Let me read you an email from April. He pulled out his own folder. Gordon to me. Curtis, if you mention Dale's incident to anyone outside this company, I will destroy your career. That's not a threat. That's a promise. Family protects family. Should I keep reading? The courtroom went silent. Todd flipped through his papers, face reddening. No further questions. The prosecution called Adela McKnight to the stand. She was 38, a brilliant scientist who'd been forced out of her career by Dale's harassment. She testified about the assault, the hush money, Gordon's threats. He told me if I spoke out, he'd make sure I never worked in biotech again, Adela said, her voice steady despite the tears. And for 5 years, I believed him. Until Dr. Lamb showed me you could stand up to the Campbells and survive. Curtis sat in the gallery, watching her testimony. After she stepped down, she found him in the courthouse hallway. Thank you, Adela said simply. I didn't do anything. You quit. You walked away from everything because it was the right thing to do. Adela smiled. That's not nothing. That's heroic. Curtis shook his head. I just wanted to be treated with respect. Same thing, Adela replied. In a toxic system, demanding respect is revolutionary. They talked for an hour, comparing experiences with the Campbell family. Adela had joined a different biotech company and was slowly rebuilding her career. She'd also started an advocacy organization for women in STEM facing harassment. We're calling it the Lamb Initiative, Adela said, grinning at Curtis's embarrassed expression. In honor of the man who proved you don't have to tolerate abuse, no matter how powerful the abuser. I'm not comfortable being anyone's symbol, Curtis protested. Too late. You already are. Adela handed him a card. If you ever want to contribute or speak to the group, we'd love to have you. Curtis pocketed the card, unsure how to feel. He just wanted to escape. But apparently, his escape had inspired others. Chapter 8. The Verdict. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Gordon Campbell was found guilty on all counts. The judge, a stern woman named June Clark, delivered the sentence without emotion. Mr. Campbell, you abused your position of power to enrich yourself, protected a sexual predator, endangered public safety, and showed no remorse. I hereby sentence you to 18 years in federal prison, with restitution of $12 million to Helix Biosolutions and its investors. Gordon's face crumpled. He aged 20 years in 20 seconds. Christy Campbell received 3 years for conspiracy and obstruction. She cried throughout the sentencing, begging for mercy. The judge was unmoved. Dale Campbell got 8 years for fraud and sexual assault. His lawyer had argued Dale was manipulated by his father, but the victim's testimony destroyed that defense. Dale had been a predator, enabled by Gordon's power and money. Curtis watched the verdicts from the gallery, sitting next to Adela McKnight and Ton Bird. When the sentences were read, he felt only emptiness. Justice, yes, but so much damage had been done. The civil lawsuits came next. Helix Biosolutions filed bankruptcy within 3 months. Without HX7 and with its leadership in prison, the company was worthless. Investors lost hundreds of millions. Employees lost their jobs. Curtis felt guilty about that until Keenan Hull pointed out the obvious. Helix was built on fraud. It was going to collapse eventually. You just made it happen sooner, which saved investors from losing even more when the IPO went through. Meridian Biotech hired 42 former Helix employees, including Ton. Curtis personally interviewed each one, ensuring they were competent and ethical. No more Dale Campbells in his orbit. Curtis also negotiated to acquire HX7's remains, the dead bacterial cultures, and all associated intellectual property from the bankruptcy estate for $1. The strain was unsalvageable, but the research might lead somewhere new. Why buy it if it's dead? Ton asked. Because it's mine, Curtis said simply. I created it. I should be the one to lay it to rest properly. The divorce from Christy was finalized in March. She got the house they'd shared. Curtis didn't want it anymore. He kept his original apartment, his savings, and his freedom. Christy tried one last manipulation during the settlement negotiations. Her lawyer claimed Curtis had been abusive, controlling, gaslit her throughout the marriage. Curtis's lawyer, a fierce woman named Rosie Cole, demolished the claims with documentation. Emails from Christy laughing at Curtis's concerns. Texts mocking him to her friends. Evidence she'd known about her father's crimes and done nothing. Your client is a liar and an accessory to fraud, Rosie told Christy's lawyer. My client wants nothing from her except to never see her again. Take the deal or we'll countersue for defamation. Christy took the deal. The last time Curtis saw his ex-wife was in the courthouse hallway after the final hearing. She looked hollow, defeated. I hope you're happy, Christy spat. Curtis considered the question honestly. I'm not happy, but I'm free, and that's better. Christy left without another word, her heels clicking away into a future of probation, community service, and a permanently tarnished reputation. Chapter 9. The Architect Rebuilds. 1 year later, Curtis stood in Meridian Biotech's expanded research campus, watching construction crews finish the new building. The facility would be named the Lamb Center for Ethical Biotechnology, much to Curtis's embarrassment, but Keenan had insisted. You represent something important, Keenan had argued. Integrity over profit. Science over ego. People need symbols like that. Curtis had reluctantly agreed, on one condition. The center would fund research for scientists who'd been pushed out of the industry by harassment or corruption. A chance for brilliant people like Adela McKnight to rebuild. The center's first fellows were announced in October, 12 scientists, all with horror stories about toxic workplaces and unethical bosses, all given full funding, autonomy, and support. Adela was one of them. She was working on a new approach to bacterial protein synthesis, building on Curtis's original HX7 research, but taking it in a different direction. It's brilliant, Curtis told her after reviewing her proposal. You might actually make HX7 look primitive. Adela grinned. That's the idea. Improve on the master's work. I'm not a master. I'm just a guy who got lucky and stubborn in equal measure. Same thing in science, Adela replied. Ton Bird had grown into an excellent researcher in his own right. Curtis promoted him to lead scientist on a new extremophile project, this time with full documentation and a trained team. No more single points of failure. Dr. Lamb, Ton said one evening as they reviewed data, do you ever regret how it all went down? Curtis thought about that. He'd lost 7 years of work, a marriage, and his faith in human decency. But he'd gained freedom, integrity, and the knowledge that he could walk away from anything that didn't serve him. No, Curtis said finally. I regret staying as long as I did. I should have left the moment Gordon started protecting Dale's incompetence. But then Helix would have collapsed sooner, and a lot of people would have been spared pain. Curtis closed his laptop. The Campbell family built an empire on exploitation and fraud. Someone needed to stop them. I'm just glad I finally had the courage to do it. Curtis's personal life improved slowly. He started dating again, cautiously, with plenty of therapy to work through his trust issues. He reconnected with old friends from graduate school, people he neglected while trapped in the Campbell orbit. He bought a cabin in Tahoe, spent weekends hiking and skiing, remembered what it felt like to enjoy life instead of just surviving it. And every few months, he received messages from scientists who'd left toxic workplaces, inspired by his story. Some asked for advice. Others just wanted to say thank you. Curtis replied to every message, because he remembered what it felt like to be trapped, to believe you had no choice, to think that suffering was the price of success. It wasn't. And if his story helped even one person realize that, it was worth it. In December, 2 years after his resignation, Curtis received an unexpected visitor at Meridian. Gordon Campbell Jr., Dale's younger half-brother, 26 years old, and someone Curtis had barely known during his Helix years, showed up at Curtis's office. Dr. Lamb, I'm sorry to bother you, Gordon Jr. said nervously. I know you have no reason to want to see me. Curtis studied the young man. He had Gordon Sr.'s features, but none of the arrogance. He looked genuinely miserable. What can I do for you? Curtis asked carefully. I wanted to apologize. For my family. For everything they did to you. Gordon Jr. twisted his hands. I know it doesn't change anything, but I wanted you to know that not all Campbells are like my father and Dale. I know, Curtis said gently. You're not responsible for their crimes. I worked at Helix during the trial. I saw the evidence, read your documentation. Gordon Jr. met Curtis's eyes. You tried to stop them. You tried to protect people. And they destroyed you for it. They tried to destroy me, Curtis corrected. They failed. Gordon Jr. smiled weakly. Yeah, they did. He pulled out an envelope. This is from a victim's fund. My father's restitution money. They're distributing it to people who were harmed. You're entitled to a payment for emotional damages and lost wages. Curtis took the envelope, looked inside. A check for $250,000. I don't want Gordon's money, Curtis said, handing it back. It's not his anymore. It's yours. You earned it. Gordon Jr. pushed the envelope back. Use it for your research, donate it, burn it. But take it. You deserve compensation for what you went through. Curtis considered, then nodded. I'll donate it to the Lamb Initiative. Help other people escape situations like mine. Perfect. Gordon Jr. stood to leave, then paused. Dr. Lamb, thank you for showing me it's possible to stand up to powerful people and survive. I left the biotech industry because of my family's reputation, but I'm going back, starting fresh. And I'm going to do it right this time. Curtis shook the young man's hand. Good luck, Gordon. I hope you succeed. After he left, Curtis sat alone in his office, looking at the check. $250,000. Blood money from Gordon Campbell's fraud. He called Adela McKnight. I have a donation for the initiative, Curtis said, and a story about how even the children of monsters can choose to be better. 3 years after his resignation, Curtis Lamb stood on stage at a biotech conference in Boston, accepting the Kavli Prize for Innovative Research. His new bacterial strain, Meridian 1, developed with Adela McKnight and Ton Bird, was revolutionizing pharmaceutical production. Safer, more stable, and fully documented so anyone could maintain it. This award isn't just mine, Curtis said in his acceptance speech. It belongs to every scientist who's been told to compromise their ethics for profit, every researcher who's been harassed or exploited, every brilliant mind that was pushed out of this field by toxic leadership. He paused, looking out at the audience. He saw Adela in the third row, beaming. Tom beside her, Keenan Hull giving a thumbs up, and in the back, Gordon Campbell Jr., who'd become a successful researcher at a small, ethical startup. The Campbell family tried to break me, Curtis continued. They tried to make me believe I was nothing without them, that I should be grateful for their exploitation. They were wrong. And every day I show up to my lab, collaborate with brilliant colleagues, and do work I'm proud of, I prove them wrong again. The audience applauded. Curtis accepted the crystal trophy, felt its weight. This was real. This was earned. Not through intimidation or fraud or nepotism. Through talent, integrity, and the courage to walk away from anything less than respect. Thank you, Curtis finished. And to anyone out there in a toxic situation, wondering if they should stay or go, leave. It's terrifying. It's hard. But on the other side is freedom. And freedom, I promise you, is worth everything. The applause was deafening. Curtis Lamb, the man who'd walked away from everything, had built something better. And this time, no one could take it away. Epilogue. 5 years later. Gordon Campbell died in federal prison from a heart attack. The obituaries were brief and unflattering. Dale Campbell was released after 6 years for good behavior, tried to rebuild his life, and ended up working a minimum wage job after every biotech company rejected him. Christy Campbell remarried, a much older man, rich and controlling. She seemed, from Curtis's perspective, to have learned nothing. Gordon Campbell Jr. became a successful researcher and named his first daughter Ada, after Adela McKnight, who'd shown him what ethical science looked like. Curtis never remarried. He dated occasionally, enjoyed his freedom, and poured his energy into research and mentorship. The Lamb Center produced breakthrough after breakthrough, all conducted with rigorous ethics and transparent protocols. On the 10-year anniversary of his resignation from Helix, Curtis returned to the original site where he discovered the extremophile bacteria that led to HX7. Iceland's volcanic vents, harsh and beautiful. He stood on the black sand beach, breathing cold air, and felt at peace. He'd been the foundation of an empire built on fraud. He'd walked away, and he'd built something better. Not bad for a guy who just wanted to be treated with respect. Curtis Lamb smiled and headed home. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there.